Related to a weapons offense that happened at the hospital, and then the guy took off, and then
decided to park and bring him back.
Car and they posted it into the lake.
Jesus. Crime is down though.
Hey, Jerry.
One below zero.
No kidding. North 15. Roll your window down.
Well, it's only showing 10 below air temperature right now, so.
The rest. That's the high.
Yeah, I. Burr.
Yeah.
This Burr.
Is he driving and participating in the meeting at the same time?
He's listening in.
The trained professional.
I'll be turning the camera off. I just wanted you to see that I'm real and I'm just listening in, so.
Next up,
Mm-hmm.
fine.
And confirm. Just doing an inspection. Pretty chilly.
It's moving us all over the road.
You want one?
I don't.
Shovel it your driveway tonight after we get done. He's out there house sitting for him. They're in the white.
Oh, you're a good friend.
Yeah, they're in the wild.
Last week on the man, I'm sure.
Payments. So.
Boys.
Yeah, go check on the cat, make sure the heat's still working, water's flowing in the pipes and. On the driveway, the sidewalk.
That's where my kids wanted to go this weekend, this year.
The needs.
They got some kind of deal, that couple, they get like really low cost airfare. But
Probably.
something, yeah. It's like, that's great. Spending that much time, chase me all over. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Already have your surgery?
Like, all the grab bar in my bathroom.
Get rid of all your.
Yeah, one of a kind. First one is left. They could do, I have a friend that had both done at the same time, and I have actually I know a couple other people who have, but they're definitely not doing it as often.
Oh, it's.
Well, yeah.
It's all fun.
Yeah.
Wow. But they get it done in all three.
Yeah. Okay,
Like the coffee.
we have everybody here.
I think we do there. Good.
My wife's gonna.
Two friends.
At night.
I think.
Yeah.
We're ready to go.
Okay. You recording?
Already on.
Great, thank you.
Should be reporting. Yep, we're good.
I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Ad hoc Public Safety Building Committee, Thursday, January 22, 2026. I don't think we have any appearances.
Any online would like to make appearance or? If there's anyone
We
who'd like to
do.
comment on me?
That's the.
No.
No.
We do. I'm not making an appearance, but I believe someone wants to.
Okay,
I would like to speak if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
if you could identify yourself,
Yes,
that would be
my
great.
name is Ralph Bradley. I live at 611 Clear Spring Court in Monona.
Mhm.
Did you need any other information?
No, that's it. Go right ahead. You have 3 minutes. Uninterrupted, we're
Okay.
listening.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your time today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Looking over the meeting materials, I appreciate the efforts by the committee on the cost cutting of this project and looking for ways to make this more economically feasible. But I was a little bit concerned with the ongoing removal of well number 1 and building a new well number 4 when it doesn't appear that they're necessary. that could be a $4 million cost savings, about 8% of the entire project cost. And that was not listed in the agenda. I don't know if that's going to be discussed or not, but I'll look forward to the discussion later. I did see in the materials there were a couple of mentions of the meeting on June 17th, 2024, where the option for the new civic campus was agreed to that would remove well number 1, and just had a few points to make on that as well. It seems like the decision was made for convenience sake. There were comments that it would take longer to walk between departments. Specifically, there was a mention that walking from City Hall to the fire garage would take 3 times as long as it does currently. There was also the point that the removing the well number 1 would allow for more parking in the area, which seems reasonable. But during that same meeting, it was mentioned on a few occasions that well number 1 would fail within 5 years. And I have to say that there does not appear to be any basis in fact for that at all. While well number 1 is old, it does seem to be serving the community well. In a Public Works Committee meeting in, I believe it was July of last year, Public Works Director Dan Stefani mentioned that well number 1 has served with the Monona well for many years, and with ongoing maintenance, he would anticipate that it would continue to work very well for many years into the future. And also going back to the age point, if we're talking about age of wells, well number 2 is essentially the same age as well number 1 at this point. One last point I would like to make is that there'd been some comments about response time being impeded by the well, and we've not been able to ascertain that there's any fact behind that statement as well, that the existence of the well is not impeding and has not impeded response times. All of that said, in summation, we're looking at effectively a $50 million project here. There are needs, no doubts, but this is a big investment for the city of Monona, perhaps the largest in the history of Monona. I'm sure it's the largest expenditure and the largest project for the city. And we would ask that the mayor and the city council commit to having a referendum on this question before proceeding with committing this kind of financial responsibilities on the community and the taxpayer, and that the city council and the mayor would abide by the results of the referendum. I understand that any referendum would likely not be a binding referendum, be more advisory. So I would ask that we abide by the results of a referendum as well. That said, that's the only points I had to make today. And again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make anything else? Okay, great. Thank you. Do I have a motion? Have you?
I do not. I forgot to complete the minutes, so.
Okay.
So those will be available at the next meeting, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have no.
That's actually should be a July 8th, that's the correct date as well, since.
Okay.
My apologies, Mayor.
We have no old business. Under new business, E1, the presentation of the projected cost feasibility for the initial project. Neil is gonna run through slides from that were put together by Ray and with the figures from CD Smith on the initial project.
Yep, if I could, and just, I think I want to kind of cruise through these, Mayor, in terms of obviously this is the whole point of this meeting is saying we're probably not going to proceed with that.
Right.
So in terms of doing that, at least wanted to kind of show kind of what the progress of what we were ready to kind of present. But it's been back in August since kind of our initial conversation and trying to reduce scope of work on this, but at least wanted to get the committee up to speed fully. So just to kind of see where we had gotten to. I'll ask the certainly technical questions. The Bright team is here to certainly answer any of those if we have them as we go through these. So try to get this out of the way here a little bit. Let's see. That goes a little better. Okay, so let's go. not been a good day for technology today. So just to recap and schedule. So this is again just to fit the structure of what the decision-making team is going to be. Eventually, as we develop the plans, looking out and getting some additional feedback as we go. Certainly we'll be maintaining a similar process going forward with this process. Again, this is the overall kind of the design schematic of the overall process. So getting restarted, the design, the development, construction, bidding and award, and then the actual production and closeout. Again, just a very high level overview of what that process is. This slide originally had hard dates on it in terms of timeframes when they created these. Those will obviously have to be reset. The process itself will likely be the same, but those dates will have to be reset. So just to give you some timeframes on if and when this moves forward with a concept, this is kind of roughly what the timeframe would look like for each of those kind of things. Again, similarly with the rest of the process here, again, following up the specific steps at each level and time levels to do this. So it is not fast process. This is not something that's going to happen right away. We are looking at kind of resetting and doing some reanalysis with Bray, depending on direction of the commission and the committee here today. So again, it's recapping kind of where we were. So June 13th, proceed with option 1, which did include the removal of row 1 at the time. Reviewed the 2 Reeves Council to proceed with that direction. CD Smith was recommended as the construction manager in August 15th, 2024. It been approved at the City Council in January of 25. So about a year ago, and then staff had worked with CD and Bray to refine the space needs assessment. That was ready about midsummer, and actually had gotten that done in between August and September. Williams when we really had that ready to go. And then talking with the mayor, reviewing it, decided that most likely that scope work was not going to pass muster, certainly at the cost at the council level. So we kind of had direction from the map to revisit the scope of work, which we are ready to kind of talk about some direction with the committee today. Now, I'm looking at my 2 public members here, guys. Obviously, staff has been involved in quite a bit of this already. So really kind of looking for you guys, for feedback from you guys as we proceed on this going forward. Again, this is just what the overall project schedule would have been with the original scope. This will need to be updated as we go forward. Again, Bray will be more than happy to provide that for us if we proceed. Again, same thing with just kind of the overall construction schedule and timings related to that. Again, all of these slides were in your packet, so forgive if you have specific questions, please interrupt as you go through here. Again, we did agree to hire CD Smith as our construction manager on this project. So this is, that was a competitive process. Reviewed multiple proposals on doing that. We are continually looking, probably we'll need to update these data based on our population growth. Again, our projection, we probably have more recent data coming up with our comprehensive plan update. So that will be pending. Overall residential units, again, this number is, in terms of either what's in the pipeline or actually been constructed. This is probably still relatively close, but probably needs to be refined a little bit as well. Again, historic calls for police service. You can see this weird little projection here. I think we had in terms of, I forget exactly, this the year to date, but we were kind of figuring, chief, that this was the number was going to end up going that way, not down. I think just in terms of when we had the numbers, I'm guessing we've got more current year end numbers coming out if we don't have them already. So we'll certainly be updating those as we proceed. Same thing with fire. I think we had an estimated number. I have a feeling that's a higher number than what we thought as well there too. So we are tracking this information, EMS as well. So we do need to verify the 2025 numbers on that as we just got to the year end on these. So the overall building program, this is kind of what the existing building is here right now. This was in terms of the overall square footage, was 28,000 square feet. See the percentage breakdown of kind of how that was broken down. See the overall percentages have not changed much, but certainly the square footage was dramatically increased based on a lot of these different areas that were incorporated into that overall analysis. A lot of this area has to do with a lot of the additions were certainly vehicle storage in a lot of areas was a large component of that, as well as some of the kind of joint spaces, including council chambers, other conference rooms, meeting spaces. Those types of things were a large amount of what that large difference was. Again, did a very specific existing building to the new building comparison. The large thing that was coming up here was really shifting the location of really all three areas of service. Admin, PD, and fire was all shifting in terms of on site. terms of looking at, the most notable was certainly moving fire from one side of the building to the other, in terms of utilizing the access on that particular side was probably the largest change. So in terms of, it went into, so the existing site, what it would look like versus the overall design process. Again, this was all of the things that we're looking at possibly being impacts to that overall design. Again, so trying to maintain the existing building to the extent possible, keeping the existing site versus a new site, building new somewhere else that would likely require land acquisition. Phasing additions to be able to maintain operations on site. Obviously, there's a logistical challenge and a cost associated with that as well. Moving basically the front of the building to be more facing the street down in this particular corner here. And then incorporation of other municipal projects, including Nichols Road, possibly Schluter Road, Healy Lane realignment, and just communications tower, and also some interest in solar and geothermal energies are all other factors that are going to need to be worked into that overall design. So there was discussion at that time from the committee level about moving the well at that time from a logistics standpoint. I think certainly depending on what we end up doing there, that is still something that may need some discussion in the future at this point, but we're not requiring it as part of what we're looking at right now. So this is kind of the overall layout of what the new facility would look like. Essentially, kind of remember, obviously PD or fire is more over on this side. It's been switched to this side. The administration has been switched down to more facing on the street down here, with police being more on the back side of this. So again, and then realigning the parking lot area between us and the community center to kind of provide some better access and a better pedestrian connection between the two. Most notable was the kind of the turnaround area and the pass-through area for fire vehicles actually to go straight through. Certainly would be, I think, was considered an advantage to being able to move certainly the larger pieces of equipment. But in this area, we'll kind of go on to the next one here. This is the more detailed type of breakdown of how those areas were divided up into specific rooms and uses. Again, the kind of the larger interior area for PD vehicles and adding a secure sally port was a major consideration, as well as the pull-through areas for specific fire equipment apparatus. Those in terms of trying to identify additional storage areas, other things, certainly basic uses that would kind of apply to that. There were significant, in terms of training areas and emergency operations centers, were also things that were kind of considered and looked into this. Adding a council chambers here was probably the one notable one for the administrative for the shared use areas, actually having that room here on site rather than going over to the library. Certainly would be beneficial to the library as well as the city. So again, a significant increase in square footage, obviously, between all of the different, aspects of what we looked at on that. So I think the original plan was, Matt, what do you remember what our planning window was? Do you remember years, what we were looking at?
In terms of the duration, this
Yeah.
was, I think we had 30 years.
At least 30, yeah.
projected.
It was at least 30, yeah.
Yep. And those are obviously difficult projections. The benefit Monona has is we're landlocked, right?
Yep.
So our calls for service are gonna be a variant on a lot of things outside of geographic growth.
Yeah. Certainly adding living quarters for fire staff in terms of being able to be on site and respond as calls come in was another significant improvement that we were looking at for the building. So just some renderings here in terms of what the structure could look like. I just added a couple of them. These would be the new fire bays, the alignment on the other side of the building, more of the administrative wing here. PD being more on the back, kind of back on the side here. And this was from, again, this is actually from Nichols Road, was what the building would look at. So certainly an attractive looking building, very nice looking building. But then comes the bad news here, I guess, in terms of what we're looking at overall of those projects. So CD Smith did work with Bray to evaluate costs. Came up to the initial project total was $43.9 million. That doesn't include some of the other site improvements and other things we would be looking at in terms of improvements to Nichols Road. There's other offsite things that might be needed to help actually facilitate the project. So we asked CD Smith and Bray to focus specifically on the actual building cost, is what we're looking at for their costs at this point. So there were some other additional offsite. There's also some exclusions that were included that were about $5 million. That we figured would be costs that might need to be added, and those are listed down here. So if it was a new well. Here, communication tower removal, relocation of the tower on the corner of Schluter Road, this is the actual siren. So there's rock in the site. If we ended up doing geothermal soil, again, there's other costs we haven't actually identified related to those, so that number could actually be a little higher depending on what we end up pursuing on that one. So we did a pretty good, I think, very detailed in terms of breaking down what they felt using the space, broke down that Bray had done and actually evaluated those numbers. CD Smith did a very detailed look on those and evaluated those. So this is obviously what they do. So this was based on the current situation as of last summer. So certainly things may have changed a little bit if we actually were to update these particular numbers. It certainly does not make a good idea on what inflation could do going forward, obviously.
I would just add, Neil, those were, I'll say, validated a bit by a public safety building, police and fire bid in Port Washington about that time, which is currently about 60% of the way through construction.
Okay.
So they were not just CD Smith's guess, it was a validation on a similar type project.
Excellent, good deal, perfect. So we did some calculations here on, so I got Mark here in terms of, we had tried to figure out in terms of what, we made some assumptions on interest rate in terms of how long we would pay, whether it was a $43 million project or a $30 million project, what the tax impact, annual tax impact would be. So we did start, certainly trying to be sensitive to that and understanding what that impact could be. And we'd have to, probably want Mark to, work his magic and rewrite some numbers and evaluate whatever number we end up taking a look at and see where we're at. 3 and 4% probably still a fairly good estimate in terms of what interest rates would cost us, but who knows what the future holds on those. And certainly the difference of doing a 40-year borrowing versus a 25-year borrowing. So you kind of see the difference in impact ranging from, as low as $65 to $100 on the per $100,000, but on the average home, that ranges from basically $300 to just over $600 a year on the average home, depending on how those would go on a 3% rate. And those numbers all climb slightly, obviously, with a 4% rate. So not an insignificant impact. And again, just kind of looking at what we think project budget inflation might be. We're assuming 3% inflation is just kind of a boilerplate standard pick number. Obviously, that could go up or down. What that ends up when, and then the cost per square foot overall goes up. Kind of some interesting numbers in terms of just a 5-year increments. What if that assumption holds true? What that cost per square foot could be. So time is generally not our friend when it comes to some of these costs. That's for sure. And then just for a historical note, in 2013, it was $182 a square foot. So just a depressing number to look at what it could have been. So then there was certainly some efforts that as we went through the process over this amount of time, there were several things trying to tighten up the project from a design standpoint that were done in various, all 3 areas. So, reducing the garages, reducing the sleeping rooms, reducing some of the meeting spaces. So there were some efforts at the staff level to try to get this lowered a little bit. It's again, still obviously the nature of the project, and again, trying to look out in the future. This was what we thought, certainly would be beneficial into operations. But staff has certainly agreed, and I think Zaire will talk a little bit if we get done with this about, what we think there's. This presentation is still, I'm still very confident on what staff believe they will need long-term beyond 30 years to have this facility work. But they also understand the fiscal constraints and know that we're going to need to look at something probably maybe a little shorter term, or certainly on a budget to try to make that work. And we have just confident that in working with Bray going forward, we can come up with a reasonable thing that would certainly not be ideal and probably would not meet all needs, but we think can at least meet the majority of them and make us functional. So, any questions on that? That's a lot of work that went into that to get it to that point. But again, unfortunately, just the overall cost was just significantly high number that we just don't think is going to be politically saleable in the community. So,
Any questions about the slides? Yeah.
Could we refresh the purpose or the function of this committee? What's expected of this committee?
That's a good point, and since I have not been part of this committee until sitting right in this seat right now, I can't remember if there was originally a written charge for this committee. And I believe it was to make a recommendation to the city council, as well as the other committees that would be involved in any kind of new construction in the city, on the best foot forward for a public safety building for city of Monroe.
I do think, Jim, I think the main thing, I know it was super helpful and from staff standpoint, at least since I've been in the last 2.5 years, was helping us evaluate and select the architect as well as the construction manager. Those were two very significant steps on this, yeah.
I had some thoughts. I looked, if I can.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a hard pill to sell. Cause it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of work's been in and you look back in 2013, you say if we postpone this any longer, it's gonna make it even worse. So, but it's easier to make changes on paper than it is in the field. And maybe we take a step back, and we've got a beautiful building there that we can't afford, in my opinion. There's need and want, we want everybody together, the whole clinic, but maybe we revisit that. I think most of the activity for the police department is probably on 12 and 18 in Walmart, at least it used to be. I don't know if it's changed much. Do we break up the bands a little bit? There's a dog park that could be relocated to Winnequa, and we could construct something new, which would be closer to 12 and 18. And some of where things are. We've got the house on Maywood that if we put in the civic portion, new, and then reconfigured what was remaining to accommodate the fire department's needs. I know that means going back to the drawing board, but that's going to be but I toss that out there as an idea as we try to value engineer what's going on here.
Sure.
We've got good team members now. We got Bray and Smith that can help us put some realistic numbers to this. And those are just some ideas, but I think it's going to be, we've got the community center, what's going to happen to Maywood School.
Right.
And after the disaster of the school board and the $7 million, we've got to give some real deep thought to how we're going to do this. And the well 4, I think to get more communication with the neighbors who are going to be impacted going forward is going to be needed, especially if we do take this. We need a referendum for this money, right?
At this level, yes, although it's not a binding referendum. But yeah, I would certainly, some sort of survey or referendum for the kind of money that we're looking at. It's slides right here, but we do have a potential option plan B that I'd like to bring forth tonight as part of this discussion. What we wanted to get your reaction to the overall costs first, and you've done a good job. Yeah.
We couldn't have scripted it, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have
Yeah, well, I guess, yes, so the same thing, I don't think, even with, you say all the rest of it, and the way my taxes are going up, I don't see that people are going to, take another, like every year they're going up a grand or more, so, I just don't see that hit coming, that it would be feasible to the city to for the amount of money that is going to be, it's a beautiful building, but I just don't see the residents who are going to pass it.
So I would say, just for our public members, I think without exception, and which isn't to say, this isn't a beautiful building. So let me just start as the new mayor, thanking Ray and thanking CD Smith and thanking this committee for the work that you have done. It is a beautiful building. If we could afford it, you know, wouldn't we all be proud? I would be proud certainly, but I share the concern. If you listened, my first budget as mayor, if you looked at any of those deliberations, one of the things that I was harping on, from the get-go, just even in terms of our annual budgets for capital and operating, was the importance of us tightening our belts and really not, and because everybody in this community here, and I understand how people feel about their property taxes. I have property taxes too, right? We all do. So, my priority when I first became mayor was to get my head around kind of how we got to this point. From talking to everybody that was involved, with the exception of you two, but I talked certainly to Brian as the alder that's been involved, and to Brad, and to each of the chiefs, and to the fire department and police department, and try to get my head around sort of, and to the former mayor about how we got to where we are. Just to try to understand, because, I have to admit that $50 million. I mean, I saw sketches of the beautiful building like everybody else. But until the slides came through, in the breakdown, I was surprised. Let's just put it that way. And at the end of the day, I think just about everybody in this room, if not everybody in this room, concurs, whether they're a Monona resident or not, we can't afford it. If this was the only building we were doing, the only major capital expense that we had for the next 30 years, it would be one thing, but it's not. We know our pool is, 50 years old. We know, yes, the Maywood decision, whatever that is, if we have a decision to make, is dangling out there. We know that our community center is also old and needs HVAC and needs a new roof, and the public works items. I mean, the list is endless, and the staff knows that better than anybody because they're preparing their capital budgets by department every year, and they know what it looks like 5 years out and running. So with that in mind, recognizing that this wasn't a possibility, I started thinking and discussing a possible plan B with the staff, with the chiefs, with and most especially police, fire, and admin. And I'm not an architect. I don't play one on TV. But I did tap Brad, who's been obviously involved with the committee and is our GIS specialist, and we, drew out a few sketches. After talking to a bunch of staff members, including the chiefs, and sketching out something with a pen on a piece of paper, and as a result of that, we think that we've come up with a plan B, just a GIS version, not architecture or anything at this point, but plan B that would work for us for many years, probably not 75 years or 60 years, but would work for a long time. You still got the old, it's still not, I mean, you've got, I'll just before we look to the slide. So it's a plan B. And first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Brad, because that GIS specialty came in really handy to rethink some of this. And that plan B has been shared with all of the department heads and the police and fire, to say if we did something like this. Would it? Would you get what you need? Including some of the safety concerns like Sallyport, for the police, for larger squad room for the police. Victim interview rooms for the police, expanded space for administration, a municipal room for the city council, wider bays for all the fire, for all of our fire equipment, and a fully renovated this whole building, the police side and this side, as well as the fire department being renovated in addition to widening the bay. So and the idea being that as you look at this slide, I would not pay attention to the red that is the furthest up that stretch. That's what Brad's figures, which we'll show you in a minute, are based on. Forget this. We just talked about extending the bays. This is what I discussed with Chief McMillan, is extending the bays so we can widen the bays. And we can do that when this building goes away, and this is a storage building that is predominantly Parks and Recreation. And in Parks and Recreation has already been approved for a storage facility to accommodate all of their equipment. And so we think we can shake this. And so the idea is all this original stuff gets renovated, this gets renovated and extended. And then the additions are administration and a municipal room over here. And adding police here, and then the whole parking lot shifts. This is a lot that we bought, that you're all familiar with, that we bought with the idea of needing it eventually for something like this. And so this house would come down, this becomes a parking lot, and this extends in Min. And Brad, I don't know if you want to. Yeah.
Mayor, if I have an opportunity just to share.
Sure.
First off, as a taxpayer, I agree, $43 million is a lot of money. However, I look back, staff was directed many years ago to see what your anticipated needs would be down the road, 50 years, 60 years, whatever the case may be. And I think staff did a great job of doing that. Now, that being said, the plan that was brought forth by Bray, I thought met most of those needs. There was some value engineering done, and I appreciate that, especially as a taxpayer. But I'm concerned about what I see here is being a Band-Aid to fix something we need today. I don't see any anticipated growth. If we borrow money for 30 years, 40 years, are we gonna have to look at doing something in 10 years and still owe money on what we did?
I think it's plan 30 years. I think that this is 17,000 square feet additional fleet. 17,000 altogether.
Okay, so what I see, and I'm biased as a firefighter, I only see the bays being extended. I don't see anything else other than remodeling the dungeon that we live in now. I'm concerned about that.
Right.
I don't want to build a new building just to build a new building. We all have needs. And I don't want to be short-sighted. Because today's the first time I saw this picture. Chief McMullen did share this with me, so I was kind of blindsided when I saw this.
Right.
So it looks like the reservoir is going to go away.
No, that's the coloring is wrong there. The reservoir is still there.
Okay.
As is the well. We have not made a decision on the well or the reservoir as part of this.
Okay.
And this isn't an architectural drawing. It's just a sketch of of a plan B.
I understand your plan B,
Yeah.
and believe me,
Right.
I understand the costs.
Yeah,
I just don't want to be short-sighted or pay for something over 40 years
couldn't agree more.
that is gonna need something in 10 or 20 years. And
Couldn't
we'll
agree
still
more.
be paying for it.
Couldn't agree more.
Um,
I promise you.
I've been in this process, it's my third go around,
I understand.
and you know, we keep pushing this cat down the road.
Yep.
And I'm afraid that this is what's gonna happen again. You know, we're gonna get another estimate, you know, Bray will do their magic and, you know, make this fit. I have no idea what's what or where it's gonna be.
Right.
And to me, it's just, we're putting a Band-Aid on. And the only thing I see the fire department gaining is a bigger apparatus for it.
So that's not the case. As I said, all the space would be renovated, number one, and the fire department definitely gains more than just wider bays. And number two, I would not be, and I don't think this committee would be, nor would the city council be interested in doing a Band-Aid. We really feel like this, I mean, in conversations with the staff, including both chiefs, they feel and if you let us finish the presentation so that you can see the kind of additional space that fire and police and admin get, you know, based on the GIS as just a starting point. Because it's not to say that we couldn't add a little bit more here or there, you know, take out a few parking spaces, do some more tweaks as Neil did with that red line that I, you know, at the top of the page that I said, forget that for a minute. And, you know, one of the things that the fire department talked about is could we put a second story on part of the garage as an example. So again, this isn't an architectural drawing. This is just a starting point for something that is financially feasible and would put us in good stead for 20 or 30 years, not 70 years, because we don't know what 70 years.
You're absolutely right, we
reality
don't.
is, right?
You know,
But we do know definite needs on all three departments, and I sat down with those needs with both, Chief Cheney and Chief McMillan and said, if you had this kind of additional square footage, if you had, these things, would this be workable for you? Understanding that we can't afford a $50 million bill.
Okay.
I hear you. We're not, this is just the very first shot at could something like this work?
Start over again.
We're not. We're not starting over again. In fact, I think this is potentially a faster route. And in fact, one of the things that I've said to the administrator as well as to the head staff here is, I understand that we've been kicking this can down the road. And my expectation is that we're going to put some serious mojo behind this and get it done fast. And we're not going to, that's part of the reason why, to go back to one of Jim's points, part of the reason why I don't want to revisit other sites or fire going separate from police or a million other things, because I don't want to spend another 3 years doing that exercise again. But I think there's a lot of saliency for using the facilities that we have all upgraded and adding on to them.
Okay.
Any questions? Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
What agenda item is this, please?
This is
E2.
the second item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just talk a little process maybe?
Yeah.
I hate to admit this is my 30th year doing public sector architecture.
Yes.
And meeting this type of challenge whereby we go through a facility assessment master planning process, establish the ideal vision for the future, which can't be afforded. No different than when I told my wife to go buy a house but didn't give her a budget. We had a reality check. We
Yes.
had to pare back. But for context, for those that haven't been involved, I personally started and Bray started in this process in 2012. So it really kind of 2010, 2011, the process began with the same thing, full assessment master plan.
Yep.
And at that time, one option was exactly what was described by the gentleman on the end, which was to basically pull police and fire out of this building. We'll find a new site on Monona or closer to where our calls are and remodel basically this upper floor of this building for City Hall, and lower floor would have been for park and rec storage and other things that the community center could benefit from. That was a $15 million to $18 million solution back then. And we sat in this room and had the exact same problem. We can't afford that. And at that time, the project just stopped, right? There was another study done 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I think big picture for this committee, if you agree that the target of 25 to 30 million from the elected perspective is a more palatable number and something that we can likely get around. Nothing against the drawing on the screen. I wouldn't lose a ton of sleep over that. Ideally, I think the committee would charge the Bray leadership team and CD Smith team to come back with, give us good, better, and best options with that 25 to 30 million dollar target in mind. And you as a committee, ad hoc committee, may say this isn't gonna work. We have to reconsider this. Maybe then it does have to be, we prioritize Department A over Department B. But I think until we spend some time now having a cost target, which we didn't have before, right? We never had the perspective of total cost provided as a parameter of our efforts. This is a very common situation to be in, and I will tell you, for the three of us, not unusual at all. So not that I think, I will tell you, I don't think we're going to be able to address every need with a budget reduction of that type. But my personal perspective has kind of turned in the last 15 years to when we run into these situations, these end up being sometimes zero-sum games. Is $25 million better than zero? Is $30 million better than nothing? Basically staying as we are. And it's hard because it's emotional. We all invested a great deal of time and effort. Some of us dating back to 2012. Others just over the last year and a half. But it's, I think, hard once you get past the emotion of I'm maybe not going to get everything we need and can reframe the thought process around let's do the best we can with still a significant amount of money. I don't want to diminish 25 to 30 million dollars. That's a great deal of money and a very significant investment. So that's just the perspective of somebody who's sat in this room with people who are unfortunately not going to get everything they want, but still have a chance to do something great for our public safety and city leadership. That's what I guess I would ask the group, if you're comfortable with that range, the outcome of this meeting, maybe go back to the admin level where we developed a lot of these plans and brought them to ad hoc for updates with that 25 to 30 million dollar parameter. I don't, Neil, you and I've talked about this for 2 minutes over the last week. I think we were generally on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's in terms of, again, knowing. So we've already done, and I think the important part is just identify those things and the differences between what the main one we presented today, this is what was in there. Going from that one down to 30, this is what comes out. And then going down to 25, this is what comes out. So we have a very clear, not only in terms of financial impact, but then also in terms of facility impacts and service impacts to what those changes would be. And to me, if I'm assuming, I think that's what council would want to see, Mayor, at the end of the day, when evaluating this. And are those cuts acceptable? Even that last one, can we get down to, from an operational standpoint, or do we have to? It's like, no, what? That's really just not going to work. We just need to pick one, and then folks. I mean, if we need to do that, that would be difficult as well. It would certainly present its challenges too. But I think at least sets the table for, I think, the evaluation by council, you and council at that point.
Yeah, I guess I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I guess what I also want to say is that Neil has been saying for months, just give me a number, give me a number, give me a number. That doesn't work for me. Because I don't think you can disconnect a number from what you're getting for that number. And I'm not an architect, but I know enough about it to know, having built myself enough to know that architects usually start with what's your building program? Which is what you guys did.
Yep.
Right? Before you put a number to it, and so it just seemed like having healthy discussions with the departments, which I know you guys will do again, around. Again, this is just boxes and what Brad. For being here all the way along and hearing what fire and police and everybody needed, what their priorities were, and I did the same thing. With them, this is what we came up with. I'm not saying this is the end all and be all. This might work. It might be something slightly different, but but I don't want to. My own opinion is it would not serve us well to go off this campus.
Fair.
Let's start there, right? Because I was on the first long-term, right? And I know we've been at it since 2011, like you said, and I don't want to spend another 4 or 5 years messing around with it. And I'm hoping that we can expedite things based on what we think we truly need, not for the next 5 years, but for probably the next 20 or 30 years. And so I don't know that we're in disagreement. I'm just saying that I just couldn't pick a number out of a hat. It was helpful for me to be able to sit down with Brad based on your estimates of what renovation versus additions would cost and all of that. And at each level, like plumbing, electrical, infrastructure, et cetera, to play around with this idea, knowing that we can't afford the 50 million. So I think the important thing is if we're all on the same page about the fact that we can't afford a $50 million building, if this committee is on the same page, and it sounds like we are, then it seems to me the second question is consideration, obviously, of this as only a jumping off idea to a plan B. But I would like to go through just so people understand, since people haven't seen the narrative behind this. I would like to go through the other slides of what's in this, or in these additions that we're in.
And I don't know how, it's all show, Mayor, I don't know how much it's getting down into the weeds enough, but just to show, I guess, that there was some assumptions made from Brad when he came up with the cost. That's
Correct.
happy to do that, but.
Yeah.
And Mayor, I do want to defend Neil asking you for a number. That was me pressuring him. And I will say the only reason it is because we wanted to know as we restarted.
Right.
If we were going at this with an axe or a scalpel.
Right.
Right. Without having some target, we didn't know. And I won't speak for police and fire, but I think they both feel, and I think the Bray team would agree. The list of needs are truly needs. Can anybody go through in that program and nitpick and say, yeah, that I think that's a want? Sure. Right. That happens in every project. That's not unusual. So that's our starting point. And I just look back, I mean, we were within, I think, 8,000 square feet of the police and fire need in 2012 versus today.
Right.
So that level of need hasn't changed. So it's changed, but it hasn't changed significantly.
Right.
And so that's why I guess I was asking if, for the sake of the department leaders, as we revisit that space program, it's really helpful to have some sense of what might be financially palatable.
Right.
As I said, so we know, are we just chipping away at this? Or we really have to take big swings to get there?
Well, I would think that 50 million to 30 million means pretty big swings.
Yeah, and I'm not judging that. I'm saying that's why the number I think was important, because it's absolutely going to speed the process along versus us coming back at making up a number 35 and we say, nope, still too much. Right. And then, so I think this is a great step forward.
Right.
If the ad hoc agrees.
Right.
So just briefly, again, this was about 17,000 square feet was kind of the additions, and again, this doesn't include the renovation spaces, but I think it's our new spaces. Those were kind of the basic additions here. We looked at in terms of, 1,400, 1,400, 534, those specific areas. Again, kind of looked at Brad did go detailed, levels of square footage in terms of how those would break down potentially in each one to come up with a number. Again, I think he actually used Bray's estimates in terms of new construction versus remodeling, so in terms of to come up with those numbers.
And there's also some redundancy there in that there's a separate room for workouts for PD versus fire, which hopefully in design, we wouldn't have to have two separate rooms. Maybe we do, but there's a little bit of redundancy for the departments there that I think originally we were talking about saying if we could recognize those security issues.
So again, applying this cost per foot to those different areas, total square footages, that's what came up to approximately 23, but that was our hard costs. You start looking at soft cost addition to that. Comes up between, and a working estimate between 25 and 30 million. So it's a reasonable number based on those assumptions. Again, that's subject to just based on literally a square footage number without actual reviewing the architectural limitations and construction limitations we'd be dealing with on the existing building. So just there was some math and some geography applied to the estimates.
I guess the other thing that I would just say is that, part of the reason why we're going this route is, in my view and in the view of others that I spoke to, the whole idea of flipping everything on its end. And also flipping the staff, constantly jumping over what's being built and what's being renovated all the time around it also was, I think the estimate was originally it was about $1 million. Locating and relocating staff and everything to do that, the bigger build where we thought that by putting additions on our current facility, the dislocation of staff while some of the work was going on would be less disruptive for the community and for the staff.
That's fair. And I mean, internally, we'd always talked that village or city admin much more flexible. I think PD even said, we've got options, right? We can figure some things out with the exception of evidence. We can work with a neighboring community on intake and processing if we need to. We never got into the specifics. Fire was the hard one.
Yeah, I don't know how you phase that.
This would be displacing apparatus for an extended period of time, and we would have to figure that out as part of the next step of development is how do we handle apparatus make up a duration, 6 to 10 month period of time when we undertake a project like this. That was one of the reasons we initially began, if we need new apparatus bays, why not consider flipping them to the other side of the site so that we can keep current fire operational while new fire being built. We may not be able to afford that.
Right.
We know that, that's fine.
Right.
That's why we're back and we'll revisit, but I do want the committee to always be thinking about how do we phase a plan when we bring it forward. Because that does have cost regardless, maybe $1 million, maybe 100,000, I don't know, but there is a cost to adding on and phasing versus building new.
Mm-hmm. Questions about Plan B? Well, first of all, do we want to ask, should we entertain a motion regarding the current plan?
Well, I don't think there's any we just do. If the motion is just to direct staff to proceed on a reduced scope, I don't think you need 2 votes. I think just
Okay. Yeah, Jen.
Cost versus, I'm gonna continue what I mentioned earlier about relocating an off-site. Would that be a potential way to save monies?
My initial reaction is it depends on many departments, right? So that's the wild card. Is it police and fire? Is it just fire? I would say it would save money today, would not save money over the next 30 to 50 years. Because you'd generally be kicking the can down the road of when are we going to address, I'll make up a scenario, relocate fire first. Do some minor remodeling to move PD, expand PD into current fire. That's an option that would, I think, cost less. But that wouldn't address our long-term PD needs and it would not address our long-term city admin needs. So by when you say savings, I think first cost, yes, but I think we also collectively need to talk about the bigger picture, right? Which is addressing all 3 departments' needs.
We also have other needs coming up. Full community center. Do we look at,
I know.
look at it globally
Yeah.
and say, we're gonna take just no bad ideas.
Right.
Sorry. Police fire department go offsite. We do something different on the remaining campus.
That was explored in
2015.
2012. Yep. That was one of our strongly considered options in 2012.
And rejected because it cost 10 million back then.
Well, that was a different scenario when we made a major reinvestment on this site for admin and expanding community center at that time.
And when I was on the, was it 2012?
The final report was 2012, so yeah, we started earlier than that for sure.
I think it was the end of 2010.
Could be.
There was another ad hoc group that was in 2018.
Right, that's the one
That's a
I
good
was
point.
on.
Yeah, but that
So
was
I
the
was gonna
update
say, the
for
one that
2012.
I was on, the 2012, there were options to move fire and police, like on Monona Drive. Between 2012 and 2018, those options disappeared. I was on the next committee on 2018 that looked at other sites to be able to move police and or fire. Again, thinking Monona Drive. And we ran out of options again because there was no, the only site that was considered to be viable at that point was the Nichols school site. And the school district, A, didn't want to sell it, and B, the cost that they wanted to sell it was cost prohibitive. It was adding, because we were having to purchase property on top of everything else. It was adding an additional $10 million onto the project. So we weren't saving anything so that's when we decided to go back to this campus as to do the work that we want to do.
So the only city-owned property that we would have available for something like this would be off of Femright,
Where
or Public Works.
I don't think we have enough room in Public Works. That dog park is not big enough for.
Not for both, but you got across the way, you got the dog park, and then across the street from the dog park, you got two lots. And that, no decisions to.
Yeah,
Just
no, yeah.
no bad ideas.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jim. I don't know, it's hard for me to imagine that's site as being more attractive for the fire department, but
No, I remember back, I think it was 2018, one of the concerns about Monona Drive was you're taking away, we were trying to build a tax base along Monona Drive. Take it away if you put in a non-revenue civic building there. So,
yeah,
and schools may be available for sale, but that costs money too,
right.
to build where we already own. In some sense.
How big a footprint will the fire station need? Just
Didn't come prepared with that.
okay.
I'll
Well, the
do
only reason I
a little
mentioned that-
analysis.
There are two lots up in Oak Drive the city already owns. Now, they're small.
Yep.
And I envision it would be, a 3-story building versus a 2-story building.
It is not a big deal if the ad hoc believes there are other properties or just simply needs to have us do a quick analysis of them to rule them out as options. We can easily pull a fire piece of the program out standalone, identify what has to be on the first floor.
Well, again, no bad ideas.
Yep.
But back in 2010 and 2012, I recall along with that study was a plan for the fire department, our response times.
Yep.
And, getting us out of the center of the city got us away from school, park, swimming pool, library, and put us on Monona Drive. We still have good access to the west, but most of our calls are off Monona Drive to the Beltline, or the industrial park. And I personally think that us getting out of the residential area, especially for our big trucks, is beneficial. That being said, I understand, cost being costs, but Again, no bad ideas.
I mean, could certainly talk about that, but my inclination is that the current council would probably not be in favor of going back that far, which is to say, we decided after the last iteration, now 15 years in, that we were gonna stop chasing other pieces of property, and to use that piece of property in Leona Drive would be taking property off the tax rolls.
Well, my point is, it's already off the tax roll right now.
Yes.
But it would be pitched to get back off.
Right.
Significantly more tax base, actually.
Right.
But again,
Right.
you know, no bad ideas.
No, absolutely.
Right.
And then get 10 acres down in the north end of town in 2020. Then obviously I need support, but you know, I find it hard pressed to make another argument that we don't want to take stuff off the tax rolls than when we did.
Well, that property wasn't on the tax rolls, and it's.
My
still not
understanding
on
is they were
the-
paying $80,000 a year to do it. Tax.
Can we
because
not go there?
That's not true. We're not paying taxes.
That's not what I was told.
That's not true.
Okay.
I mean.
Let's not, if we can, let's not revisit that, that's not proposed, because it serves no value. The purpose of this meeting. I'm open to ideas, but I don't think it serves us to revisit every decision that we've made as a city.
Right. I'm just very frustrated there.
I understand that. I understand, and I am doing everything I can with a budget that's reasonable to get fire, police, and administration what they need in a fairly reasonable length of time, and not go all the way back to square one in terms of where it is, how, you know, in terms of where it is. But I'm as frustrated as anybody that we were, you know, I mean, ask Neil, I just told them, can we get a shovel in the ground by the beginning of 2027? Which would be seriously expediting everything.
I agree.
Right. So I'm all in terms of figuring out a $30 million bill that works for people. So, and Ray is into.
Again, if it's 30 or 0,
Right.
I'm in the 30 camp. But it means we all have to acknowledge that we're gonna get most of what we need,
Right.
hopefully.
Right. Okay.
I know, at a council meeting in the past, I think Alder Pula talked about considering like a public-private partnership of some sort with like residential.
Well, like
fire
residential,
station.
sure.
Is that something that anyone thinks is worth exploring, or I mean, we have a lot of development going on in the city right now?
I mean, that is definitely something that I have discussed as well, and I know there are some other alders that are interested in that option. At one point, we had somebody who had been involved in Madison's that has housing. Madison has one unit that has housing in it. I think Green Bay has a firehouse that has housing in it. And that's so I'm certainly open to that.
I mean, it seems like Nichols School could be a possibility for a project like that.
Green Bay is the current one. You can judge for yourself in the media if it's working or not. If you read a little bit about it. But I think that would significantly delay the project.
Yeah.
Years upon years out.
Exactly.
3 to 4 years at best by the time you would acquire property, find a developer, reach an operating agreement. It's a good idea, and it's great if there was a developer proposing something that we could attach ourselves to already in the geography we need to be. I don't think we have that in the community right now, and so to me, that's I think one of the hurdles.
Right.
Pretty big one is it would take a long time to pull that together.
I would agree in that, and I would just add to that I think whether or not the school sells nickels is definitely a longer term thing. My read, our read, just because Neil and I have spent some time. That is that, you know, the school the school obviously, but those buildings are full with MG21. It's not like Maywood where the school's not using it at all except for a very small portion. So our sense from talking to the school district is that that's a longer term play for them. So if they don't even decide, that's assuming, and the community obviously feels very strongly about that, which I understand. If they don't even decide on nickels for another couple of years, and then we go into our process. You're talking about kicking the can down the road for.
And the frustrating thing is certainly from a taxpayer standpoint, just shifting the burden. One taxing entity to another. So if whatever the dollar figure is, it's still on the tax bill, whatever it is, which way it is. So that's another challenge to.
Yeah, and housing on this site would be a possibility too. On the other hand, I think you probably have to have some density here.
The neighborhood might not.
That the neighborhood or that people would really react to, so that could kick the can down the road. Is too.
Would agree.
So that's why it wasn't part of it.
Just respective time, I guess.
Yeah.
Would be just, I guess, from my standpoint, I guess would throw out there if anyone would be willing to make a motion to proceed and direct staff and Ray to come up with an updated space needs based on the $25 billion and $30 billion levels for analysis, and then kind of based on an update that may using this concept. May not look exactly like this at the end of the day, but using this as a general guide. And then I would include an evaluation of city-owned properties, just as like we can do. We can certainly do a cursory review of those two options.
Like you said.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Way to go, Matt. You can have that for tomorrow and a day?
I was almost gonna make a bad joke. 7 times is the charm.
Is anybody else here before you leave, before I call an adjournment, does anybody else wanna add anything? Or add anything? Brian, other staff that are here? No?
Well, I would just say I appreciate the work. We're part of it. I appreciate the work. I will double down in support of the urgency. We're starting to experience that in terms of recruitment, as you know, and some of our needs and expectations in law enforcement. I'll only speak on law enforcement. We are certainly have outdated. Our building technology is changing, and we are certainly in old space that will not accommodate certain technology. You know, most of us in this room grew up without cell phones, and the people who we're hiring now are very talented folks who all they know is cell phones, and that's the world they live. And so having to use a physical key or something like that to get into the door is something foreign, right? I think I only bring that up because you know, many of us in this room, several of us in this room, we want this to be the part of our legacy when we go on and we're sitting on a beach somewhere, either here in snowy Wisconsin or elsewhere. And whatever we can do to fit our needs to the points that were made earlier, not just putting lipstick on something, but actually tangible needs that those of you who pay a lot of good money for the services that you receive in this city won't have to be doing this in 10 years. That is something that, you know, I will do, and Brian, I have directed and asked and begged and pleaded Brian to help. We'll do all we can to get there. But we will tell you when something comes up that is just going to be like a no-go, and then we'll leave it to the policymakers to make that decision. You're going to hear from me the honest truth of what we need, what we can sacrifice, even if it's something that is on the edge of sacrificing. But you know, you're talking to folks who make life and death decisions for a living. This is something that we can do, but we're, you know, I'll commit to you that we're going to be brutally honest in terms of things that we can afford to do in terms of sacrifices and things we can't. Because right now, we don't even have, we can go on and on, I think all of us, but adequate meeting space, right? Y'all are occupying a room that we can use right now, right? I just wanted to say, you know, we too share in some of the frustrations. But I also want to thank you, Mayor, for really taking this seriously and putting I know you don't like putting dollar amounts. I think that has helped. And giving a timeline-ish broad, even mentioning, hey, I would really love to have something started by next year, might spark some things and might really help get this moving on. So I would, you and I have already talked, but publicly, I'll do anything I can to help you in that endeavor.
I want to give a shout out to Brad again for your work. And just even around the sketch and everybody on the committee. I appreciate everybody understanding challenges, and I appreciate everybody's forthrightness. And everybody's work on the committee here for, I don't like I said, I don't like putting the brakes on. I wish we could afford 50 million, but it's just the reality. This isn't our only facility that we have issues with. And I think, don't think it's something, even if it's not a binding referendum, I don't think it's something that the community could stomach or frankly just stomach. I think we need to just. So, thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
For Sherman.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.